Hey, all, welcome to the Common Good Podcast. It's Thursday, 25th of April. Wow. Paul, it hardly feels like the 8th of April was, I don't know, 3 weeks ago?
2.5, 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
And some people won't even know why we would start a conversation with, boy, the 8th of April doesn't seem that long ago. Well, that's because
It's too
they
bad for
didn't
them.
do that. That's
They
why.
didn't see that with their own eyeballs.
They didn't see that. That what we are referring to, if you're only on the audio version of the podcast, is the moon blocking out the sun the best it can. You know, little moon doing its darndest to block the sun. Just can't really do it, but creates quite the effect. It's what
It did it well enough so the lights came on the bridges and so forth where we were.
that is something that has really come back to my mind a number of times as we thought about this. What we're discussing here all is that Paul and I went down to the Rio Grande River that serves as the border between the United States and Mexico. The first place in what we mark as the United States you could see the eclipse. And we snuck just outside of the United States, just outside of Mexico, right at the border, in the water, feet in the water. And I think it was 1:27 and 42 seconds or something when the totality was supposed to happen. And somewhere in the 1 o'clock and 26th minute, the clouds moved away.
They did. And I was thinking in the hour up to that, we might have gotten maybe between 5 and 10 minutes of like where we could see the full sun,
Yes.
like for the most part, it was blocked for that whole time before that.
Yeah. And then right when we needed, and then for the 4.5 minutes that we needed it to be cloud free, it was mostly cloud free.
Yeah.
There was
We
one
had some really high clouds, but it didn't block the view at all.
Unbelievable. And there
Really thin.
There was a fellow out there with us who we just happened to meet along the way, who'd driven all the way there 7 or 9 hours from Dallas. We had driven 5.5 from Houston. You had flown in from Atlanta. I had flown in from Minneapolis. Like a lot of work to get to the Soar River.
Yeah.
And this person had been saying before the eclipse and then a bit after that he was hearing people saying, oh, one of the things that happens when there's an eclipse is that the clouds clear out of the way, which cannot. I mean, there's nothing that makes any sense about that. I don't think
It could because you felt it get cooler, and that might have an effect on the clouds.
Yeah.
You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Maybe, but it was getting cool. Yes.
Yes, it could, but plenty of people I know have had the eclipse blocked from them at the same time by clouds. So it's
Okay.
kind of
Yes.
hard.
Fair
Right.
enough.
It's not like it never gets blocked.
Right. There are people that had total blackout of totality.
Right. I had one of my friends here in the physics department went up to like around Erie, Pennsylvania, and she said that it was blocked.
Oh, that's
But
really
she couldn't see
creepy.
it. Yeah.
It's really creepy. Almost eerie. So she traveled all the way and then didn't experience it.
Right.
And Paul, I've been referring to it. Some people have said, "Oh, did you see the eclipse?" And I feel myself wanting to say, "I experienced the eclipse."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You see a car, or you see, uh, a rock or something.
Right. But
Right.
you
Yeah.
experienced love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Akin to love. Yes.
Be,
That's yeah. Did you experience it? Yes. See,
because
I
of
knew
what?
you'd be that way, Doug. I knew you would. That's why I wanted you to come,
Oh.
because I've seen an eclipse before, but I've never seen Doug see an eclipse before.
It was something so much so that Paul and I had to. Well, I felt the need to. I haven't asked you if you felt the need to walk to the riverbank when it was over and sit down.
Oh yeah, we had to sit down.
I was
Yeah,
like, I just can't go anywhere. I don't know what to do. It was, And this was still, I mean, the sun was still mostly blocked by the moon at this point,
Right,
because
right.
how long did it take for once it started to cover it, took an hour and a half or something for it to
Yeah, it
totally,
took about an hour or so, maybe an hour and a half for it to
yeah.
totally go from, the smallest little nibble to being completely blacked out. Yeah. So it was
And
maybe
then,
an hour and a half either side.
yeah, and then the same way as it moved away,
Yeah.
and I don't want to rub it in, and people listen to the podcast the last couple of days, um, know that I've said this to Rob, who chose to see 97% coverage and didn't drive an hour and a half for totality. And I was like, well, I stood there, and the difference between 126 or 124 and 127 and 42 seconds, and then to 131 and however many seconds, was the difference. I mean, it's
It
just
was the difference. There's
it,
a big difference between 99% and 100%.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
More than a percent difference
that's it.
in
That's
the
it.
effect.
Is there a word for that in the math world that you all are in? Like the
Not that I can think of
hmm,
off the top of my head. But, it was
there
funny
should be.
after the, eclipse, I told Doug that I felt like having a cigarette, and I don't even smoke.
Yeah, that's right. It was. Yes, it was.
It feels like that. It feels when you're done, you're like, "Oh my god."
What was that? That just so wonderful. So anyway, the sky did its part for us. Any reflections, Paul, from you since it's happened? I mean, have you done any
No, just
pondering?
not really reflection, just a deep sense of satisfaction.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Just, in the face of long odds and, for you almost didn't make it, but you made it.
Yes.
And
Yeah. It had a lot
and
of moving
there we
parts.
were. There we were. And not just the event itself, but the whole experience we had over on the Mexican side uh was one for the books.
It was one. Eagle Pass, Texas, was the United States city that we went to. Piedra Negras is the Mexico City, connected by a bridge, joined together by a river, and separated by U.S. border policy and the behavior of the governor of Texas. Because on the Mexico side, it was art and murals and dancing and parties. And truly, I'm not even
Yeah,
making that
and
up.
professional wrestling.
Professional wrestling
Live free professional wrestling.
in the big plaza.
Yeah.
Just everything you want. The masks, the people
Yeah.
jumping around. And
Yep.
then on the U.S. side, not kidding, dirty old rusting railroad cars,
Containers.
containers lined up, men in military uniforms driving loud boats, scaring people away. And the people of Piedra Negras saying, come on over. And the people of the U.S. saying, we're terrified. It's
Yeah.
just, it was something. And then when the sky happened,
Yep.
and with people who are able to see it on the screen, everyone stopped, including the guys in the military uniforms carrying the
Mhm.
deadly assault rifles, and turned their eyes to the sky and looked up. And I remember glancing over and seeing one of those guys, like, standing on top of his Humvee, trying to protect the United States from, maybe the professional wrestlers. I'm not entirely
That's
sure
right, the
who the
professional wrestler.
governor's afraid of.
No, all together combined, I don't wanna bore our listeners too much with our reverie, but, all combined, the party they had over there, the contrast with the, military buildup on the American side, just crossing back and forth, hanging out with you, the birds, and the eclipse. It was just like, dang.
It was it. It was the weekend we fell in love, Paul. It was that's
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 right.
when
That's when it started.
that's when the
Yeah,
romance really
I have
really
to
took
break it
off.
to my wife.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
d- uh, let's talk a bit about birds, Paul, because hang on a minute. I'm all on the wrong buttons. Um, astrophysicist Paul Wallace, by the way, with us, who didn't even tell us about how things are in Decatur, Georgia. But not just astrophysicist, of course, author, professor, pastor, and road trip buddy.
Road
So
trip
that
buddy.
now makes your um, tell us about the birds, Paul, because you were able to do what you can do so well, which is to throw your camera on your back,
Yep.
and
The, g-
saw some lifetime birds.
the great thing about going to a place like that I haven't been before, that's so different from North Georgia where I live now, is that you can just walk down the Riverwalk, and all their common birds are new to me. It's
That's
like
right. It's
all
great.
these brand new birds I've only read about in books, just sitting out there, on the water, in the trees, hanging out, picking through the, bouncing among the rocks,
Doing bird
of the
stuff.
of the river. It's just like it's so easy and it's so fun, you know. So I saw 16. I got 16 new birds on my life list.
Wow.
So yeah, and most of those I got just by standing there and looking. I didn't have to go hunting for any of them. I just sort of, they sort of came to me. It
How many
was
birds do you
it's
have
great.
on your on your list? How many
I am
individual
three
birds have
short
you
of
seen?
300. It's not that long of a life list, but I've only been doing it for, I mean, seriously, since about 2018.
Wow, you've seen 300 different birds.
300 species, yeah. And it really depends on travel. If I traveled more, um, I would have a lot longer list.
How many
But
birds do you think
I
someone
travel a
like
couple times a year. Hmm?
I travel a fair amount, not always walking through the woods, but I've done a lot of times outside, a lot of times in woods. Do you think like someone like me would have seen or heard 300 species of birds in my life?
No, no, you kind of gotta. I mean, no, I don't think so. Because most of them I found, on purpose. Like I was out,
I see.
looking closely and listening closely. And everywhere I go, I'm just without even being conscious of it, my ears are tuned in,
Hmm.
for new sounds and that kind of
Wow.
thing. So no, I don't think so.
Again, and I did this while we were walking together at times. It amazes me that you have in your brain the capacity to differentiate hundreds of sounds that you're
But you do
hearing.
too. You just haven't practiced it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you hear a
Okay.
song faintly, you know Mick Jagger's voice when you hear it, right? For example, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Mick Jagger's voice,
Yeah.
right? How do you?
Okay.
That's one person out of billions. How do you know his voice? Because you've listened to it.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we all develop it. We just don't always develop it in the direction of birds.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's
You
what
know
I
what I
mean.
mean?
That you've developed it in the direction of
Yeah,
birds.
yeah.
You can, yeah. Well, the squirrely prepper lifestyle says that her chickens had a reaction to the eclipse. I hope they weren't too afraid.
Hope they weren't like allergic reactions.
Yeah, or just
Yeah.
really, really scared,
What
where
did
they
they do?
felt
Get
like
quiet? I wonder if they got
they were
quiet, or if they
be.
started yapping,
Yeah,
or what. They settled down, like
maybe they're
got
just
back in the.
being chicken. I don't know. Um, that's for you, Brandon Pfeiffer. Uh, hey, can we talk? Oh, by the way, 60 degrees today, Minneapolis, clear skies, little high clouds, just
We've had beautiful
gorgeous
days
here.
here, peaking at about 75 and going down to maybe the high 40s at night here.
Yeah,
So it's been really nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Days like this, when I say this, is when you're reminded that maybe the Earth isn't trying to kill you, and we're and the Rob,
We're trying to kill ourselves, but the Earth
yeah,
is not trying to kill
yeah,
us.
and maybe
Yeah.
trying to kill the Earth if you kind of look at our behavior just
Yeah, yeah,
too starkly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But when you look way up in the sky, Paul, people see things, and we've thought we've known some things about what goes on in the sky. And talking to an astrophysicist, um, we like to talk about such things. There's a whole series of articles in my news app
Hmm.
about astrophysics and the sky and so on. It's even this. I don't know, it's some online journal called Big Sky,
Yeah.
which is all about this stuff. And there's been a bit of a theme, I think, because the James Webb Telescope has been giving some feedback to people
Hmm.
who study such things, that we what we've known about the expanding of the universe is still, well, one might say, expanding. We're
Yeah.
still we're still
Good.
I'm
Nice. That was
I'm
nice.
really uh I'm really on it. I'm really on it here. That one was also for you, Brandon Pfeiffer. That So can we talk a little bit about this expanding of the universe
Sure.
and what
Yeah.
people are experiencing?
Yeah.
Because when there's a headline like it's on the screen right now that says, no, the expanding universe doesn't break the speed of light, I didn't know that was a question that was at hand. Right? Like,
Yeah. That's the answer to a question you never asked.
yeah, yeah. If you were wondering, no. And then this one also really, I think, captures what's up. Also, just great pretend star gazing
Look at
graphics
that
that they
art.
put with
Look at
this.
that art. Wow.
Yeah, it just, I mean, hope it's AI because that would be great if I could just say in my little AI app, make me that image. But the words say, not a constant,
Not a
colon,
constant.
colon. The
Mhm.
Hubble, quote, constant changes over time. All right, so some change is happening over time. The constant
Mhm.
that people have been calling it, that the universe is expanding, but how fast it's expanding and a changing constant feels like very astrophysics stuff, right?
That's astrophysics, all right.
All right. So
Here
you
we go.
said at this before we started sharing our thoughts with the others, you said you're now teaching a course next year. You've added a new course in on was it on
Cosmology,
cosmology? Yeah.
which is about this very thing,
So
and
I'm a little
it's
you,
basically what
you're
we're talking about here, but with math.
okay. That's what I was getting at. You're an astrophysicist. You teach astrophysics to college students
Right.
and some graduate students.
No, well,
Okay.
not astrophysics to graduate students. Astrophysics class is
You
undergrads.
teach other things to
Yes,
graduate
right.
students. Okay.
That's right.
You run a laboratory that has a big ass telescope that looks up
Right.
and looks at stuff like this.
Yep. Yep.
So in your world, cosmology is different than astrophysics.
Yeah. Well, it's you might call it a branch or
Oh,
a subfield of
okay.
astrophysics. Yeah.
Okay. What and
Cosmology
that's
is about the study of the universe as a whole, as opposed to individual parts of it like
oh,
galaxies and planets and stars. It's about the whole thing.
got it. It's the big genre.
Yeah, which is what we end up talking about on this podcast quite a lot. A lot of
Oh,
times we talk about Mars, we talk about space exploration, but a lot of times we also talk about cosmology. We talk about the big picture, the biggest possible picture.
yeah. Yeah, I like the biggest picture. Okay, so what when we were discussing this, you said, "Oh, well, I'm teaching a class on this next year." What will you teach in that class, and what do people now say about the constant of the expanding of the universe? That when you were being taught these things as a up and comer,
Yeah.
it was different. Is there something different now than there was
Well,
30 years ago or 40 years ago?
the headline that you have up now uh, is not new news. It's been known since the Hubble constant was first written down by Hubble, and he was way off. His number was way off, but the concept was right.
Huh.
It was known since the late 1930 that the Hubble constant is not really constant.
Okay.
And I don't know. The only question really is why they called it the constant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
that was
in other words, what that means is that the first thing you have to remember is that you've probably heard scientists say that the universe is expanding. Okay.
mhm,
So let's just take that for granted. The question is, how fast is it expanding? That's what the Hubble constant tells you, is how fast it's expanding. But it was known since the earliest days that it was never assumed to be constant.
hmm,
It was always the probability that it was changing was dominated from the beginning. The idea that it should be changing dominated from the beginning. And for decades, it was assumed that it was slowing down,
hmm.
that the expansion of the universe was getting slower and slower. But about 24 years ago, it was discovered that that was not the case, that it's actually speeding up, that it's
24 years
expanding
ago, roughly.
roughly to the year 2000, 1999, 2000, maybe 25 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, it was discovered that the universe is not slowing down as was assumed. but that it was actually speeding up faster and faster all the time. In other words, the Hubble constant was assumed to be getting lower, universe slowing down, but it's discovered that the Hubble constant is getting larger. It's speeding up.
Roundabout when were people in agreement that the cosmos universe was expanding? When was that?
Uh, the first bit of with I'm saying that the first bit of theory to show that it was possible was in the 20s, 1920s.
Wow. I mean,
But
this
the
is all
first,
brand, literally all brand new.
but but the first like observational evidence that it was expanding wasn't until 1929 or 30
Man,
when Hubble started to realize that it was probably expanding.
my
There
house
was
is older than that, where I'm sitting right now.
yeah, yeah. This is all. I mean, yeah, you might think that was a long time, but that's actually all very very recent.
Completely. Yeah,
So roughly
less
a
than
hundred,
100 years.
roughly 100 years, roughly 100 years. Yeah.
Okay, so in the last 100 years, we've understood that the universe is expanding. How well do people like you feel like you can explain that to people like me or students or other people? Like, is it
If you give me 15 minutes, I think I can explain it um, pretty simple, pretty simply.
can I start a timer? Ready, go.
the, the analogy that's most often used is that people think there's all kinds of misconceptions that people have about it. Um, One of them being, well, if everything's moving away from us, if the universe is really expanding, everything's moving away from us, then we must be the center of the universe, right?
Fair enough. I'm glad we finally got back to that truth that we've been avoiding for all those.
Well, whether or not the experimental evidence shows it, we do, in fact, believe that we're the center of the universe. Um, or
Is there a center to the universe and we're just
no,
not it,
no,
or is the
no,
notion there is no center?
no. The universe would look more or less have this more or less the same look more or less the same from any point in it.
Right? It's like the center of a basketball or of a round ball. Like any spot on it.
Right, on the surface of it is equivalent to every other spot on the
Yeah.
surface of it.
Is
Yeah.
that what you mean, or is that different?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Uh
That's
huh.
what I mean. So it's not like we're at the center and we're at rest and everything's flying away from us. No matter what planet we're
Yeah.
on, no matter what star we're orbiting, no matter what galaxy we live in, if we looked out, the universe would look basically the same. Everything would be moving away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's it. Is that the is that the explanation?
No, no, no,
Okay.
no. The full explanation would. I'm not sure we want to start it or not. I'm happy to start it, but it would take probably 10 minutes or so for me to step from one step to the next. And I would really love to have some visual aids too, which I don't have.
Okay.
But
This is a real teaser. Like tune in next time.
oh, I could do that. I could come prepared with a little balloon.
Oh,
That's what I want. What I want is one of those little punch ball balloons.
yeah.
You put the rubber band on them and you punch them
Yeah.
because those are pretty close to being spherical, and
Yes.
uh, and then I could do the whole thing, and
Okay.
it would yeah,
So it's expanding. We will grant that.
yeah, it's expanding. Okay, and
Um,
so and go on.
what is speeding it up? What it feels
That
like
we don't know. That we don't know what's speeding it up. We have a name for it, but we don't understand it, and
oh,
it's really
nice.
important to know that having a name for something and understanding it are two different things. It's called dark energy, but
Really? That's the
yeah,
thing.
that's the
And
thing.
it's called dark energy because we don't yet know what it is. That's
We
all.
have no
That's
idea. We have no idea what it is.
it's like some unknown energy, and the shorthand for it is to call it dark.
That's right. Like dark matter, for dark matter, same thing.
It
Yeah, we don't
is
know it.
dark
We call it dark.
is dark is dark matter the same as dark energy, or is there dark?
No, No.
So there's some energy and some matter in the universe, cosmos, that we don't have an
We
explanation. We just know its
right,
effect.
right. We see the effects of it, but we don't know what it is.
Okay.
We don't really know, but we definitely see the effects of these things.
Does any of that have any effect on things that happen to people on this particular planet? Is there anything that goes on, like clouds moving when an eclipse happens, or uh, how how calories are burned in the human body? I don't know, anything
You
that
know,
seems mysterious.
I'm thinking really hard, but I'm just gonna be upfront and honest and tell you no.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever the dark energy is, whatever the dark matter
It
is
may have some effect one day.
is blunted by whatever effects are happening based on our atmosphere and gravity and stuff here. Like there's not something that happens in the
Right,
earthly
right, right.
realms
There's not some effect, that you see
that
like,
we're like,
the auroras, or an eclipse or something like that,
or an
that is
earthquake or
or an
tides
earthquake, right. That is a sign or a symptom or a symptom is not the right word, but sort of a consequence of dark
indicator.
matter or dark energy.
Is
Yeah.
that surprising at all that there's whatever it is so powerful, it's causing the rate of expansion of the friggin' universe
Yeah.
to increase, but
But doesn't have
it doesn't have any effect on one of the little balls
not
whipping around in
not
the.
immediate not now it will have an effect at some point on what we can see at night. It's like
Oh,
if things are moving away from us more and more quickly all the time, what's eventually going to happen is that we're no longer going to be able to see distant galaxies because they're going to start moving away from us too fast.
wow. Does this
And so,
happen in the earthly realms at all? Is there any change of rate of things moving away, or is the are the effects of gravity or whatever in the
no,
earth
it's not going to
constant?
cause the Earth to orbit at a different rate,
Okay.
or and I don't think that it will. If it does, it would be a tiny effect billions of years from now. It's nothing that I can, off the top of my head, envision. The
What
Earth
are
is
they
bound, yeah, to the
I see.
sun.
What are they getting at with this? No, the expanding universe doesn't break the speed of light. Is that something people were needing to suggest? Was that this? Well,
Well,
what?
some people learn that it's perfectly possible for the Milky Way, which is our galaxy, and another distant galaxy to move away from each other faster than light. In other words, for the distance between us, our galaxy, and the other galaxy to increase faster than the speed of light. So if you
I
measure the distance between us and another galaxy, that distance is increasing. And it's possible for that distance to increase faster than the speed of light.
and I guess I was under the impression that nothing can happen faster than the speed of light, but this expanding is different than a particle moving. Is that why it's
Yes, yes. The expansion of space can happen faster than light. So it's kind of like this. Kind of imagine that you and I are on a stage,
okay?
and okay, we're not moving. You and I are just standing still on our little local patch of stage. But say the stage itself is expanding.
Trippy.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. You and I can be separated at a rate faster than the speed of light. Okay, by the expansion of the stage. But no matter
Mm,
how fast you and I run across the stage, across space, we can't run faster than the speed of light.
mm.
Okay. I can't throw a ball across the stage faster than the speed of light. But 2 points on the stage can be
Got it.
being pulled apart faster than the speed of light. That is not the same as information traveling through space or an object
Huh.
traveling
Yeah.
through space.
Huh. And again, people are having to consider this just in the last 100 years. Like,
Yeah.
there's no help from a couple 100 years ago. There's no.
No, no, no. It wasn't until 1915 when Einstein published general relativity that anybody even thought that this was a possibility.
Conceivable.
Yeah.
Uh,
The idea of space being flexible in that way and of being able to be, it was thought before that this space was more or less a static kind of background
yes.
that everything and that's our experience of it, right? Is it just XYZ, right? Just sort of just sits there, space, three-dimensional space that sits there, and then things happen in it.
In it.
But it turns
Yeah.
out that space itself has a flexible and dynamic character to it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I was thinking that until you said that sentence. I was still thinking that
Yeah, right, right.
fundamental. And this is different than space time or
It's part of space-time. If you add
okay.
time
Okay.
to that flexible three-dimensional space, if you add time to that as a kind of fourth dimension, then that's space-time.
Jürgen Moltmann. You know that name?
Yeah, I've met him.
Of course you have. German
Yeah.
theologian, religious
Yeah.
theologian.
I,
Uh,
wow. Yeah, I met him I met him actually in a women's prison in
what was he?
Georgia.
What had he done?
There was a woman, and I can't remember her name. This was about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, who had been sentenced to death in
Okay.
Georgia. And she, while she was in prison, fell in love with Moltmann's theology.
Okay.
And he came to the prison to meet her because she started writing him.
Wow.
At this time, I was a freelance writer for Emory Magazine, Emory University's magazine, and they sent me to cover the story for, because he was, Candler, the theology school where I went, you know, had a connection with this woman. She had actually
I
taken
see.
classes,
Okay.
remotely, like from inside prison from Candler. So I went to go cover the story,
Wow.
and I met him and I met her, and and then sadly, tragically, 2 months later, she was executed.
Hmm.
Despite just these cases,
I do.
despite appeal after appeal, and letter after letter, and evidence after evidence that she's
Right.
not a threat.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it was a tragic case, but anyway,
Tragic
so I
case.
did
Huh.
that's quite a digression, but I did actually meet Jurgen Moltmann. Yeah.
I have met him as well.
Have you?
Yeah, we did an event, and he was one of the speakers at this event that Tony Jones and I coordinated. One of these
Mm.
JOPA events that we did. These
Mm,
theological. No,
mhm.
maybe it was one of the theological conversations.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know Jürgen Moltmann, fair enough. You don't need to know white German
Yeah,
theologians, Christian
yeah.
theologians in this little world. The reason I bring it up is because a few people in the chat are talking about how any of this, the ways in which this stuff relates to religion. And it was actually Jürgen Moltmann who in, I heard first incorporate an understanding of the divine God with the ideas of an expanding cosmos,
Mm,
right? And like that there's this that if we believe in a static cosmos, then we kind of need to believe in a static God.
right. There's a deep connection between our view of the cosmos and our view of God. Yes.
So once someone starts doing theological work, they're like basing it on some set of assumptions.
Right.
And so if you start with the assumption of an expanding universe, not an expanding some of the things, like the
Right.
thing,
Right.
which
And
still
expanding everything.
which I still need to ask if we have time here about into what is it expanding, or
Ah.
how does someone like you get your mind around that? But his idea was, okay, then we should have an expanding view of we should have a view of an expanding God.
Mhm.
And what are the implications? What are the theological
Yeah.
implications of this kind of expansion? Which I really like. I love the interdisciplinary play between
Yeah.
science,
Yeah.
between all the sciences and the arts and the
Yeah.
hedonisms or whatever we're doing, whatever human beings do. whatever it is.
If you look at the history of cosmology, the way that we have viewed the universe over the last couple few thousand years,
Hmm.
the models that we've had of the universe, there's always a connection between our model of the universe and what kind of God we're talking about. I mean,
Yeah,
there is a real connection between the two. You know,
because even if
Newton's clockwork universe that had this
there it
sort
is.
of deist God, distant, kind of wound the thing up and let it rip and stood back, you know,
Yep,
because that fit Newton's model of the universe.
yep.
And so, yeah,
And so
and
if
go
you're
on back from there.
yeah, if you're into theology that uses God like that, which I do, or you're just into universe theology,
Mhm.
you know, like the universe called me to, or the universe did this, or then you're still kind of implicated by the
Yeah.
expanding
Yeah.
nature of it.
Yep. Yep.
So it feels like if we're only 100 years into this notion, because I had heard other, you know,
Mm.
Carl Sagan and other people say the
Yeah.
things about an expanding universe, but for whatever reason, it was more impactful for me to say, like, well, not just thinking about how matter or space relates to itself, but like, I don't know, maybe we should think differently about the way things are and what we're
Right.
up to, you know, whatever
Right.
that pursuit of human existential angst
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Um,
So basically, the way we view it is that the universe, the evolving is a good word for it, because it's not the same as it was before, and it's going to be different in the future than it is now. It's always changing, and it's, you know, so the word evolution can apply to the cosmos,
well,
to the whole universe,
mm.
as well as to, you know, biology.
And this is somehow related to the Big Bang too, right? Because a lot of this stuff that the Webb telescope has been seeing is implicating lots of knowledge we have. Is that
Yeah.
right? This expanding because I guess I
Yeah.
get a little confused with the bang in my mind. Like, so the bang, and then stuff starts to go
Yep.
and just keeps going.
Yep.
Am I
And it's
somewhere
still
right?
going.
Still going.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
it's going faster than it was 5
Right.
billion years ago.
Right.
What?
Yeah. You know, scientists
Are
at
we
first,
sure?
when the Big Bang was first sort of you know, put out there as a possible theory for the origin of the universe,
Yeah.
most scientists didn't like it. But the assumption, the working assumption at the time, was that the universe it was infinite in age, and but for most scientists, it felt too religious, you
Yeah.
know, to talk about the universe having this sort
Yes.
of big, dramatic, clear t equals zero, like, you know, beginning, you
Yep.
know. But over time, the evidence in favor of the Big Bang has only gotten better, and all other theories that have been, you know, put out there have been just over time just ground down and not to, you know, can't be taken seriously.
Is there something in the however people think about the rate of the expansion of the universe increasing? Is that related to our understanding of whatever was the initiator of the bang,
No, we really
or
don't have. I mean, there could be a connection.
huh,
Um, the thing about the Big Bang is that there's a kind of wall in time beyond which we can't see. It's a very
back?
short amount of time. In other words, we can't see back to. We are forever. It's forever hidden from us, basically. In principle, uh, the actual
I see.
t equals zero moment. There's certain quantum effects that block us from seeing it, even in principle. So
Mm.
we don't really know. It could be that the universe existed before that and had is a cyclic thing. You know, goes expands once and then again. Does, you know? We don't know,
Oh,
um, because we have to be kind of agnostic about what came before that. That
is that a theory
original.
Paul feels somewhat comfortable with? Is that a novel theory that no
Me?
one else holds? Yeah.
No, no, I don't even hold it. It's
Huh.
just a possibility out there. I'm perfectly happy to be agnostic about what came before.
Hmm.
I don't insist that nothing came before. You know, some religious people might insist that, you know, there was absolutely nothing before and universe was created ex nihilo by God. I don't necessarily believe that it was created ex nihilo, out of that means out of nothing at all, out of absolutely nothing. I don't really have much writing on that.
Yeah, you don't care one way or the other.
No.
Hmm.
That's the
Do the
traditional Christian view, ex nihilo, that God created
Yeah,
the universe out of absolutely nothing. But there's plenty of minority views as well within the Christian tradition that say no, that's not
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So
I
I don't
like to
really
say that's the view held by the loudest and most powerful people, not necessarily
typically
the best, right?
because those
Uh,
people have a God that is ultimately powerful, that
yeah,
that is absolutely right,
yeah,
omnipotent,
yeah. God is the dark matter.
right.
Walter White from Breaking Bad. I am the one who knocks. You know, uh, you think there's some dark matter? These people say
Oh,
it's
I see. There's definitely some dark matter in
dark
Walter White's
matters.
life. Yeah.
Dark matter's got the name. Um, uh, did we get to the question about into what is it expanding,
No,
or
we never got to it.
is there anything you can say? You sort of perked up when I said that
It's
continues
just,
to.
it's just the kind of question that I've heard from students a lot. That's why I perked up. Like, oh yeah, I've heard
Oh,
this before.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
because the idea again, it goes along with the idea that there was the notion that people typically have, and there's no reason why they wouldn't have this,
yes,
is that the Big Bang happened like this. It's like there's all this space, like normal XYZ three-dimensional space that we all live
okay,
in, just waiting around, nothing going on. And then all of a sudden, into that space, somewhere at some point, at some location in that space, this explosion happened, and all this
yeah,
stuff is rushing to fill that pre-existing space.
okay,
That's not that. It's understandable that people would think that because that conforms with their experience of explosions, and
yeah, yeah,
and
right, hmm,
three-dimensional space that we all live and breathe in.
right,
But that's not the view that scientists have of it,
mm,
because the thing about the Big Bang is that and the thing we mentioned earlier about
mm-hmm,
space not being a static kind of
yeah,
background that
mm-hmm,
everything sort of just happens on. Space itself was wrapped up in that explosion, so there was no space for it to expand into. There was no pre-existing space for it to expand into. It's like the space itself was wrapped up in that explosion and didn't exist before the explosion. In other words, space is a product of the Big Bang.
okay, and
Okay,
it's still the
it's
product
not
of the
pre-existent.
expanding,
It's still expanding.
still
Yeah,
making,
yeah, yeah.
making.
So
Okay,
there's not like this empty space at the forefront of the exploding stuff, at the edge of the exploding stuff
yep, yep,
that the exploding stuff is rushing into.
yep.
That's not, doesn't work that way.
Uh, um,
And that balloon analogy, the thing I can do with the balloon would help to
yeah,
draw, I think, a pretty simple picture of what I'm talking about. But it's difficult to do without the
okay.
visual aid.
But you can, I guess I can sort of imagine you put a dot on a balloon and then you start blowing it up. Is that essentially it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's essentially it. Put lots of dots on it. All the dots move away from each other all the time.
Hmm. How
No matter which
fast is
dot you are, all
how
the other
fast is
dots.
this happening? Is it so minute by our scales that that's why the Webb telescope with its new powers are what's been necessary to see this? Or is it
You
like you
mean
look at a
how fast is the expansion happening?
yeah, how fast is the expansion happening and how fast is it what's the amount of increase? Like
Okay,
is the
well,
increase so
yeah,
teeny that it's
yeah. Well, the issue at hand. Where's my numbers? I had some numbers written down here. The issue at oh, it's right here under my coffee cup. Um, the issue is that there's two numbers.
okay?
One set of measurements says 67,
Okay.
and the other one says 74. But your question is 67 what? Right? Like,
Yeah,
what
like
does that mean?
yeah, how much of a difference
Yeah,
is there between 67
yeah.
and 74?
So, so s- what it means is that the units are these. I'll tell you the units, and then I'll
Okay.
try to unpack them. 67 kilometers per second.
Okay.
Okay, so that's about 40 miles per second.
Okay.
Okay, per unit of length. And what that means is this: if there's a distance in astronomy called a meg. Get ready for this. Strap in. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
A megaparsec.
Nice.
Okay, which is about 300 million light years.
Okay. One
Okay,
one megaparsec is like 300 million light years.
yeah.
Okay.
No, it's about three. 1 megaparsec is about 3 million light years. Pardon me,
3 million.
3 million light years.
Either way
Yeah.
for me.
Either
Either
way,
way.
it's a long way. Okay, so what
No scale.
67 kilometers per second per megaparsec means is that a point 1 megaparsec away from us
Okay.
is moving away from us at 67 kilometers per second.
Okay.
And if you double your distance and you go 2 megaparsecs away, then
Okay.
the speed is twice that. It's
Okay.
67 times 2 kilometers per second moving away from us.
Okay.
So 67 kilometers per second for every megaparsec that you go out.
Okay.
That's the number.
And the expanding is now 74. It's now
No, the trouble is that if we do two kinds of different measurements, close up versus far away measurements, one set of measurements gives us 67, the other one gives us 74 for the current rate of expansion. There's a disagreement there, and there's a big that you know what that's called? Get ready for this. It's called the Hubble tension.
ooh.
Yeah, I know it sounds exciting, doesn't it? The Hubble
Has that been
tension.
around the whole time? Like has that been around constantly?
No, it's been around for the last 20 or 30 years.
I was just making a
Uh,
constant joke, Hubble constant joke. I was
oh,
just doubling down on Brandon Pfeiffer's sheer enjoyment.
yeah. So there's been some disagreement for a while, but it's gotten sharper and sharper and
Okay.
sharper because the measurements that produce both numbers have become more and more certain.
Yeah, because one of the things that was in some of these articles was them saying, as it turns out, observational error is not the explanation for whatever the
Exactly.
problem was. I didn't know what the problem was.
Exactly. Yeah. The problem is that we have two different numbers.
67, 74.
Yeah.
Is it
One based on one set of measurements and one based on another.
is it and one is nearer measurements and the other is further measurements?
Yeah. One of them is based on something that happened uh, very far away. And another way of saying that is that it happened early in the universe. One of them is based on a measurement
Mm.
on something that happened about 300,000 years after the Big Bang, which sounds like a long time to you and me, but which is just after the Big Bang. And another one is based on measurements of things that are very up close, which means very recent.
That is a confusing concept that I feel like you've said so many times in our years of
Yeah.
this conversation. I've never gotten.
And,
I might just have a
yeah.
little spark of light here. That
Yeah.
the
In
further
astronomer
away
language,
the further away something is, the the closer it was to the start
right?
of all of this. And the
Right. So
closer something is, the further away from the start it
the further away
was.
from us so the further away something
It
is,
made sense for a minute and then I lost it.
here's the thing: the further away something is that we
Yep.
see, the earlier
The
in
earlier
cosmic history it was.
it happened.
So if we see something that happened 300,000 years after the Big Bang,
I see.
that's very, very, very far away because that's
So they're
so
looking at
recent.
that and they're measuring that, and that's 67, whatever these little made up
Right.
things are. And they're
Yeah, that's
looking
the
at the ones
67.
that are closer to us,
Yeah.
which are more recent, and they're like, that's 74. So the difference between 67 and 74 isn't because we measured it wrong. It's
Right.
because it used to be happening at 67, mega mega Knutsons, and now it's happening at 74, and that 7 is because this sucker is speeding up. Is that
Right.
fair?
Right. No, 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 no. These are both. This is confusing. These are
Okay.
both calculations that should match the present rate of expansion. Okay. One of them is based on observations that happened a long time ago. I mean, events that happened a long time ago, but they're both numbers that should agree, even
And
though
they
one
don't.
of them is based on observations from a long time ago. The other one was based on observations from more recently. They should agree.
Wow.
In other words, the 67 to 74 does not represent the speeding up universe.
I see. I see.
Okay, they are both numbers that apply to the now that should agree.
Hmm.
But one of them is based on events that happened a long time ago,
Hmm.
but should still be the present value.
A couple of comments in the chat that I know we can't get to because we're out of time and we both have to go.
Yep.
One comes from Jeff Kitterman. I don't know what this means. Is matter frozen light?
No,
Do you understand the question?
I don't really understand the question.
Okay.
Light can be converted to matter, and matter can be converted to light, but in no
Okay.
way would I consider matter to be frozen light.
Okay. Alex says, how about since energy can neither be created nor destroyed, it indicates to me that energy has always existed. It just changes.
That's
The
right.
Big Bang is the change energy made into the material world. Planets, stars, even space. 2 question marks.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it could be, but again, we don't know. I mean, the energy matter that we have in the universe came from somewhere. And if energy can be converted into matter and vice versa, then yeah, we. In fact, at the beginning, at the initial point of the Big Bang, everything was energy. There was no matter. It was
Mm,
all light, and all the matter that we see condensed out of light,
mm,
which is a weird thing to think about.
yeah, and it really matters. One final. I still apologize. I'm so sorry, everyone, for your loss in this. How can it be that at some time, anytime, nothing existed? Seems to me, Mike says, that something existed always, then it is always changing and evolving.
That's kind of how I see it too.
Hmm.
I would never claim that there was ever a time when absolutely nothing existed because I just don't know.
When there was no nothing.
No, I agree with Mike.
Something. Some cousin
Something.
it out there somewhere.
I agree with Mike on that one. Yep.
Ah.
Mike
Yeah,
B.
I like the simpler times when the moon slid in front of the sun and people believed the gods were attacking. That's just better.
It's not as confusing, is it? It's like it's
No,
pretty immediate.
no, because you're pretty sure it was because of the people on the other side of the river that chose to put the
Yeah,
railroad cars
yeah,
there, and yeah,
yeah.
that's why, because of what they did. Much better
I
explanation.
tell you though, there is a impossible there's an impossible to get rid of human impulse that connects things in the sky to our lives.
Absolutely,
Absolutely. I mean, like meaning in a meaningful way,
yes,
like astrology, stuff like that.
totally,
It is absolutely impossible to wipe out.
yeah.
It's a part of our nature.
Well, thanks for reminding us of all those good things. Astrophysicist,
You are
uh,
welcome.
journalist. I didn't even know that. And and not only physical road trip buddy, but mental road trip buddy on the Common Good Podcast Science Edition. So
That's right.
thanks.
That's
Thanks
right.
to all of you who've been a part of all of this. A bunch of people around today. We appreciate that. Mike and Squirrely Prepper and Jeff and Kimberly and Alex and Brandon and Jeremy and all the people that were in the chat. If that none of that makes sense to you because you're listening on the audio, you can go watch all this. And if you want to see any of it, a quick, easy way is you go over to votecommongood.com and it's all right there, or you can go to our YouTube channel. But if you're at votecommongood.com, find the donate button and give us some of your money. Stick up. All right. Thanks, Paul, and talk to you soon.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye. Bye, everybody.